Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teachers in the Dungeon. I'm Tom Gross. Well, we are not actually at the dungeon this weekend. We are sitting at a dinner table, and it is normally the night that we play with our staff group, and most of the staff is here. Dan is not here because he's out being scholarly with his Scholastic Bowl team here on a Friday night. That's strange. But he's not here, so what we decided to do instead is play a little bit of Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's the first time for most of us. But before we get into that, I want to let you know that here on today's show, right after our conversation about this Dungeon Crawl Classics, I had a conversation with Andrew K. Wood about his new Kickstarter that just recently came out last week. You definitely want to check it out, but stick around for the interview. So here we just wrapped up a Dungeon Crawl Classics one-shot adventure. I am sitting here with our friends. This is our staff group and our friends, Brian DeSutter, Paul Scherter, Nate Sidwell, and Marcus Kugler. Mark, you ran this session tonight, and you've been running Dungeon Crawl Classics in our game club this is your second year doing that.
Yeah, second year running it all the way through for the kids. This first time for teachers.
Yes, indeed. So tell us a little bit about the one shot. Maybe even, I don't know if you chose this one specifically or how that all went.
Well, DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics, they have, if you're going to start playing, they have this, what they call a 0 level funnel, where you just kind of have these characters. They're not adventurers. They are townsfolk, villagers, farmers, anything like that. And they're just trying to get out of their station in life or get thrown into a situation precariously, however it turns out, and have to work with what they have to make it through. And that's what we were doing tonight. And we did the 0 level adventure called the Veiled Vaults of the Onyx Queen. Try saying that one again.
I was going to say.
And it was a 0 level. I had a bunch of randomly made characters for all of you to play. And we went through. It's pretty straightforward dungeon crawl. There's not a lot of... There's role play involved, but it's not a straightforward role-playing adventure like our normal D&D.
Right.
And so it's a lot more rolling dice, swinging things, trying to kill stuff, a lot of characters. A lot of these characters die. So if you're playing this game, and especially at a 0 level, be prepared to lose characters.
Yes. And also, I don't know if it was unique to our game or not, but a lot of shenanigans, a lot of laughing, might have been some split sides. Some of us are going to wake up with sore abs tomorrow from the laughter. Maybe we'll get into that. Maybe we won't. But I did want to say you said you had some characters created, and it's a good thing you brought a fistful of them. Because, Brian, how many characters did we go through?
We lost 17 characters this evening.
So here's what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of go around and just share a memorable moment from tonight's game that involved either your characters or just a situation in this game that we played. And so, Brian, I'm going to start with you.
So I started with, Mark gave us all 4 characters to start with. And so I had a squire and I named him Sir Stabby. And I was like, he has a 3 personality, which means he has a -3 on any personality roll. So I'm like, this guy is just going to be, like pig-headed, lead the charge, and he rushes into battle. And so in the very first room, he rushed in, ran over to a door, tripped a trap, and immediately died.
Yes. He was the first to go, right?
I think somebody... Well, no. Yeah, I think he was the first to go.
I think he was.
But because of his actions, several other people then died immediately after as well. And so he really... I think in the first 2 minutes, we lost 4 people.
Okay.
So it was a great way to start the evening.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's go on over to Paul.
The characters that I started with, I had a cheesemaker, a scribe, a woodcutter with a 6 stamina, so -1. So he got tired as things went on later. And I had a rutabaga farmer named Ophelia, who somehow survived till the end. Both Larmer my woodcutter and Ophelia, the rutabaga farmer, made it to the end somehow. Do not know how. They should not. Larmer had 1 hit point. Ophelia, everyone was rooting to die because she was mildly annoying, but she was traumatized. She's a rutabaga farmer, and her sister had been murdered earlier in the day. It was a rough day. This was quite the hilarity. It was just absolutely insane in the best kind of way.
All right, so we're going to pass that over to Nate. Memorable moment from tonight's game.
So yeah, I was in a similar boat. I started with 4 characters and eventually lost 3 of them. One of them made it to the very last room, and then that was I was handed some gloves by Tom's character, the halfling glover Lefty.
Oh shoot, he's in the pile here.
Something or other.
Lefty, yeah.
Lefty. But he gave me some gloves, and I was thrilled to have the gloves. And then the next combat sequence, I rolled terribly and got tangled up in my gloves. That's how we wielded it in the story, and then we giggled a lot, and it was great fun. This was really cool. I liked the format of this. I felt it was like stress free and kind of wild and just more action. You know, it was action based and kind of super cool. So I would definitely do this again. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Lefty Proudfoot.
Proudfoot, great
is the one. Yes. So, Mark, you were the DM or the GM, I suppose. Whatever. I don't know. What do you call them in DCC?
The judge.
The judge.
The judge.
You were the
Yes.
The arbiter who sits on high.
That is perfect. So, something that was memorable to you about tonight's game.
Oh, it was a lot of fun to see everybody just having a great time. I've never run a game for the whole group before, and so running a game that way and seeing you guys really enjoying it, that was just a good nice standout for me to have it seem to be successful. Now, I really liked, from my point of view, and if you at home don't know this about Dungeon Crawl Classics, there are critical fails and critical fumbles, and that's what Nate was talking about just there. Is when you roll a natural 1 or you roll a natural 20, you then roll again on a special table to see what happens. And it was seeing all of the critical hits were great, but the critical fumbles, those are what makes it really fun for me. Rolling that table and seeing how badly everything falls apart for people.
Why is it that I only remember one critical success? Were there more than one critical success?
Yeah. We had
Okay.
4 or 5.
I guess I just missed. I just wasn't paying attention to
you had
those
a
as
couple.
much as.
It was mostly just higher damage, which is not a complaint, but it's not nearly as funny as when you think your character's charging ahead to stab the big bad and they drop their spear, which is actually a pitchfork that they're rolling with a -1 modifier anyway.
It was definitely fun to feel the dread when somebody rolled a 1, though.
Yes.
And I just felt like so many ones were rolled tonight.
7 or 8
Yeah,
at least
there were
tonight,
a
for
lot.
sure.
A whole bunch of
Yes.
them. So I would say a favorite moment for me tonight was, I'm going to go specifically into a part of the game where my character, Melonhead, who was a squire, he was not one of my original characters, but Melonhead had a good run of success, and he was really starting to feel empowered, and he felt like the knighthood that he was heading towards, and he had this intelligent shield that he had gained, +1 shield sanctuary that he could talk to, and it could shed sunlight and everything like that. And so we walk into a room. We walk into a room where there's a whole bunch of villagers, and they're like scattering from us and stuff, and they're hiding behind the sarcophagus. And we walk up, and we read a plate that was in the sarcophagus that told us about just the lore of someone that was in the adventure. But part of the lore had something to do with a book that we had. And I looked at Paul, I said, "Where's the book?" And you said, "Well, he's upstairs with that dead dude." And so I had Melonhead look across the sarcophagus, and he points at one of the villagers and says, "You there, go retrieve the book." And I don't know, out of context, it probably doesn't sound quite as funny, but in the moment, it just was it was a side-splitting moment.
It was.
And we just really had a ton of fun. And so the next thing I want to do is kind of just let you guys share some things you like about the game, or as far as the rules go, things that really stood out to you. I'll start with this one and say, even though it is designed to be a dungeon crawl, I mean, we were in a battle within the first. I mean, I don't think it was in the first 5 minutes within. I mean, but what was cool is, and I don't know, probably because we've played so much together, that we were able to still tie that role play in to this. And I think that's, I mean, even though it's not designed for heavy role play, just by making characters and giving them the funny quirks and all of that, it just added to the enjoyment of this game. So I'm just going to open it up. Anybody who wants to share something about what you liked about the game itself, the Dungeon Crawl Classics.
So this is Paul here, and there's weird dice in this game, which is actually kind of fun. There's 5-sided, 7-sided, 30-sided, 3-sided.
Yeah,
so it's
14.
And so it's just another fun element of randomness of when the judge says, "All right, roll a 5-sided dice," and you're like, "What? Well, sure, all right. That's this one." And that's a ton of that. That's just a ton of fun. But like Tom was saying, it is 100% not designed to be role playing heavy. But if you embrace the characters as they come to you, and they're going to come and go, it does add an element of fun, because everyone hated my Ophelia character, wanted her to die. Somehow she makes it to the end. Another of my characters, Smirnov, not Smirnoff. It's very different, totally different. He was a scribe, and after some other untimely demises, he took the lead for a bit until he kind of got melted by alligator lion puke. I don't know exactly. I don't remember what the thing was called, but he was the one that had the book that Tom tried to tell the villager to go get, and that was a hilarious moment. So it's just great because it's pure chaos, but it's also what you can just bring to these characters whatever you want, because they're going to go away really fast, probably.
This is Brian. I truly embraced the don't care about your character. And so the big difference between this and D&D, I tend to be a little bit more cautious in D&D. In this regard, like I said, with Sir Stabby, charged right in. I had another character that I named Dead Meat. He was one of the other people who suffered death immediately after Sir Stabby. But it was nice to not have to really... There weren't any severe consequences to your actions, really, is what I would say. Because you're like, okay, my guy died. Oh, I had 4 characters to start with. They all died. Mark, the judge, was like, hey, take 2 more characters. Okay. And 1 more of those guys died. I ended the game I had 5 of my characters died, and 1 of them lived. I think Tom burned through the most. He had 6 die, and had 1 at the, he had 7 characters that he used, and Paul somehow made it through with 2 of his original characters.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
And that's running this with the kids. I can say, this is Mark again, and I can say that that's the goal of this 0 level, is to end with 1 character. And DCC is really good about saying, hey, it's going to be all random. And maybe that's okay, because once you start to level up, because past the 0 level, then you do start to level up and you get classes and you get to get better at things. You've really kind of grown to like that character a lot, flaws and all, no matter what it starts with. So I like to see that kind of go as it goes along, especially with the students, because they grow into that character and really get into it and see all those things where, if they're rolling up characters for a 5e campaign, it's fine, but they're going in with a very preconceived kind of idea. No, you're being thrust into this, and this is what you get. So,
yeah, this is neat. I thought the peril aspect of it was great, because immediately, there was a little bit of setup, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're in a perilous world, and what do we do? and then it was immediate action. So I thought that was awesome, and I felt a freedom with the sort of not worrying about the character so much. I felt I could do whatever and just roll with the sort of chance of it, and I was going to get a new character if I needed it. It was sort of liberating. Like a more relaxing in a way. Like I tend to be more concerned about my character in the other game, and but I truly enjoyed it. I thought it was great, and playing with you guys and your improvisation skills is amazing. So I find that inspirational as well, and it was great fun. So.
Austin, do you have anything? Mark, did you have anything else as the judge that you wanted to add about the game itself?
No, I think it's not Dungeons and Dragons, but it's still a D20 system with some other funky dice thrown into it, which makes it kind of fun. Mm-hmm. It's not hard to figure out. It is more akin to old school Dungeons and Dragons. If you went back to Edition 1 or AD&D, it's stuff that I knew when I was a kid. It's very, you go in, hack and slash, and you get treasure, and then you go to the next one and do the same thing. It's very much like that. And if you played that as, a kid, it's kind of fun because it's reminiscent of that. And it kind of takes you back to just playing as a kid.
So just a final thought that I have about Dungeon Crawl Classics is that I felt like it wasn't super rules heavy, and that it was very simple to play, teeny tiny character sheets that you had mentioned, Mark, as I was asking, well, now what happens to the survivors? Do we get to go up to a level 1? And you'd mentioned yes. And then my next question was, is there a full character sheet? So I am kind of curious how the game changes as you level up and characters do become a little more permanent, I suppose. Because I'm assuming that if my first level character dies, you're dealing out these 0 levels again, and then until we are able to get someone to get back to first level. I don't know. But that was a ton of fun. I agree with all of you. This was so much fun, and as always, it's great playing with all of you. I don't know, Nate, that I would call it improvisational skills. It was just improv. yes. But yeah, as always, playing every month with all of you, it is a ton of fun, and looking forward to next month where we're all back together, back to our D&D game. Dan leading us through. I always call it Telesaria, which he says that's not actually what it is, but that's kind of the name that stuck. So we just go with it. So we'll be back at it in December. So thank you all so much for joining us for this part of the show. But as promised, here is my interview with Andrew Kaywood. I'm joined here in the dungeon with our good friend, Andrew Kaywood of Kaywood Publishing. Andrew, welcome back to Teachers in the Dungeon.
Thanks, Tom. Good to be in the dungeon again. I'm starting to know the hallways.
There are some tricky moments out there. And yes, the more you've been with us many, many times, we were talking about prior to coming on the air here, that it's been probably since June. And of course, we got to visit in July briefly when you joined us for our RPG summer camp and talked to our kids about making monsters.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. There's been that's 2 summers I've joined in at the camp. Yeah, I think it's great that you guys do that.
Well, we can't do it without people like you who are willing to share your talents with our students. I will tell you, you ran that session this year on making creatures, and we are running a contest right now. One of our listeners created a minifigure. Bucky Productions is his organization. He creates minifigures out of other items, and so he made this crazy chicken serpentine thing. And we decided that we're going to run a contest with our students to name it, create a stat block for it, the description, all of that kind of thing. And so some of the kids that were in your session, I emailed them specifically and I said, "Hey, you did that session this summer. You ought to jump on board and get involved in this contest." So we're looking forward to receiving those as the semester comes to a close. We are coming on today to talk about a new Kickstarter that you have coming out. But before we get to that, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the books that you have coming out currently. These Kickstarters finished a while back, and I'd like to hear the feedback you've received, or just kind of where the process is with the two newest books that you have.
Sure, yeah. So the newest books are the World of Mir campaign setting, which is the biggest book we ever did. And it's basically compiling the world that we've been working on for almost 10 years. And so that was a huge project. And it's very comprehensive. It's a world with 9 different continents. And it's really built similar to the world of Greyhawk in that there is lore in the world that you can use, and you can use it and have that experience. However, it's also built so that a lot of the archetypes in a fantasy world are there, and there's lots of space in the world to explore, and areas that are not, fully, not that they're not fleshed out, but that they're really perfect for a homebrew template. So for example, if you had, a story with giants, a campaign with giants or pirates or vampires, there's areas in this world that are perfect for those sort of different kinds of stories. And there's many different areas. And then and it's mostly classic fantasy. You get a lot of detailed maps, you get obviously encounter tables, but you also get 280 different settlements and multiple kingdoms, and you get a lot of detail, a lot of really intricate detail. And we have supplements, actually 3 other books that are going with this that add even more, that come with the Kickstarter.
Well, you know that I received the book. I followed your Kickstarter, contributed, and because I wanted to get this book because we had talked about it, and I just was fascinated with the world. And the Wizard of Zog, is that his name? I'm punting here. I think that's his name. He's on the cover.
Yeah, that's Oswald Mir, who the world is named after. And his nickname is the Wizard of Zog because that's the original continent he came from. And so part of the lore in the world is that they say one person can't change the world. Maybe look at the current election, and that might actually not be true. Maybe one vote will change it. But I know that's happening up in here in Canada. We just had an election that was basically cited by a few hundred votes in our province. So anyway, this idea, that one person can make a big difference. Well, in this world, one wizard has. He's totally changed things because these 9 continents are separated by extremely dangerous oceans and climate events. So there wasn't much travel. So all these continents have grown up independently, and they're really their own worlds. Well, now that's changed because this wizard has invented some portals that enable travel around the world and around the multiverse. And he's opened Pandora's box. And part of his story is that he realized what he's done now, and he's trying to help fix it. But the doors have been opened.
Right. All those things you just talked about are reasons why I'm really enjoying this, besides the art. Of course, all of your books, I love the art in it, as well as the maps that you mentioned. So we just did our holiday shopping guide last week, and on the show, and I mentioned this book as one of my items that I think people really need to check out, in addition to your series of monster books, which, by the way, I really like that in your world book, your campaign setting, you do lots of reference back to each one of those monster books. I was going to ask later, but I'm just going to do it right now. When will the World of Mir book be available to people who missed out on the Kickstarter, but now they hear about it and hear me talking about it on the show? When is this available to them to purchase through? Is it a drive-through RPG?
The PDF will be on our website, and then the PDF and the printed versions, soft cover or hardcover, will be on drive-through RPG. Actually, it should be on sale. We're looking at Tuesday, the 3rd of December, and then probably in January, maybe sooner. We're also going to have it for the first time. We're going to have a book on Amazon available too. So we'll have printed versions available through Amazon, and those actually, so there's going to be a number of options, and that's pretty exciting to show people that, because like you say, it references the monster series, and really it's a world where now you've seen those monsters plus the core creatures, and now here's a home for all of them.
Yes. So definitely wanted to bring that up because it came on our holiday show. But you had another book, your first adventure book. Am I correct in that?
First big one. We've done smaller ones several years ago, but this is the first big one that's fully illustrated, and it's going to have a print version. So yeah, the first one was kickstarted in the spring. That's Rise of the Mushroom King. And our plan for the adventures is they're going to be 72-page books with softcover and hardcover versions, and then the PDF as well. And they're going to be quite affordable. We're really aiming to, we're inspired by the original modules from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and those way back then, they were pretty reasonably priced. These are our books are bigger, but we have a fair bit of art, again, by Travis Hansen, just like the Monster books and the Mir book. And this first adventure is our first foray into it. And the PDF has already gone out to the Kickstarter people, and their printed books, we're going to try to get some of them out before the holidays, but probably most of them will arrive in January. So the public release will probably be in January as well, once we get all the Kickstarter books on the move, but probably that will be available in January for the public. Yeah, that was interesting because we talked actually before on your podcast about the challenge of making an adventure. It's for any fantasy RPG. However, there's a few new monsters, and those obviously have a 5e stat block because those are the people who've been with us for so long. However, we have conversion tables for many other games for the stats. But most of the adventure, like most adventures you buy for role-playing games, you don't need, it's not mechanically based. So it's very easy to use with other games. And we've also made low, mid, and high level options. And we talked about the challenge of trying to figure out a way to do that. And I think it works the way we've done it.
Okay, so the Rise of the Mushroom King is moving and will be available in January, likely be available in January.
Yeah.
So you're announcing currently, and by the time this show releases, your newest adventure book will have just hit Kickstarter. And so let's talk about that. I'll let you tell us the name of the adventure and give us some details about what we should expect.
Sure. So the new one is The Fall of Rivenhelm. It's kickstarting on November 7th, and then it's going to December 2nd. And it again is a 72-page book, low, mid, and high level from multiple TTRPGs. And what it is basically is a sequel, if you want to use it as a sequel to The Mushroom King. And The Mushroom King adventure begins with, for some reason, there's mutants in the city attacking innocent people, and the players have to figure out, how this is happening and why is it happening. And it's a combination city, dungeon, and underworld adventure. This next story, The Fall of Rivenhelm, is quite different, and it can be played as standalone. So you don't have to play Rise of the Mushroom King to play it. And it is quite different because it's a landscape where a massive city has been destroyed, and the players are needed to infiltrate this city where the castle is being captured by the Mushroom Army from the underworld, and the queen has been captured. And what you have to do is infiltrate the city. So you're going through this landscapes, kind of like almost like a wasteland, like almost a bit science fiction, some science fiction elements. You go through this wasteland with this bizarre combination. There's the regular city population, but there's also some very strange creatures. And some of them come back from our monster series. And they've got to make their way to the castle, secure it, rescue the queen. That's the general adventure. But they also know that this underworld army is what's attacked the city. And as I said, it combines with the first adventure, but you don't have to do both. Mm-hmm. It does actually, now that because I'm about halfway through finishing the story part, although most of the book is done, and I've sketched out sort of the latter parts. But as I get into more detail, the one thing it really reminds me of is actually the movie Escape from New York. I don't know if you know that movie with Kurt Russell from the 80s.
Uh-huh.
So it has many elements that remind me of that. It's a similar story, and it's a similar journey in terms of this wasteland. Although I didn't have that idea, I didn't have that idea originally, but as I'm writing it and filling out details, and the story starts to get filled in from the sketch of the the story you have. So yeah, I think it's quite different than the first adventure, and I think it's a lot of fun.
So I knew the name of the new one. Had the name, the city Rivenhelm in it. And so, of course, now I have your campaign setting. So I had to go and look up Rivenhelm and see what are we dealing with here. And it became pretty apparent to me that maybe this has nothing to do with it, but when I saw it, I noticed that Rivenhelm is not necessarily a well-organized city. And that you were really clear on that at the very beginning. You mentioned, unlike other cities, and I don't remember the ones, but you said this is a more of a chaotic type of a setting. So I guess, when I thought about it, I was like, it would make sense that this would be a good city to invade because it doesn't seem to have quite the resources or the togetherness. And so, what am I spot on?
You're spot on. And we decided, we have all these locations in the world where there's stories that are clear from the monster series and clear from the setting. So when we start the adventures, where would be a great place to start? So we thought, let's choose the two biggest cities in the world. And the first adventure, Rise of the Mushroom King, is in Rogan's Gate. And that city is well organized. It's stable for the most part, but enormous for a medieval city, very, very big. And it's a city-state actually too. It's not a kingdom. It's not part of a kingdom. It's its own city-state. It's so big and powerful. Well, there's another city nearby, and these two grew up in the history of Mir. That's one of the other books we have. You'll learn these two grew up sort of together. Rogan's Gate was sort of always the older brother, and Rivenhelm is not far away. It's also another enormous city, a city-state, free city. But unlike Rogan's Gate, as you said, it's much more chaotic and it's much more decentralized. It's sort of like the difference between a stable monarchy and when the power becomes decentralized. And sometimes that's a good thing in our, in the history of our world. But it can be quite chaotic when there's, the people in power are not very organized, or like you said, maybe they don't have the resources. So yeah, we intentionally chose those first two cities to start the adventures and to have this option to connect them because it's two very different stories.
Very good. So I have one more question for you before I let you go. And it goes back to a conversation we had when we were talking about the making of the World of Mir. I remember you saying, I don't remember what my question to you was, but I remember you saying, well, we started with one location. And then as we played, it grew and it grew and it grew into what you have now. So I'm in possession of the book. I am dying to know, where is ground zero? Where did you begin? When I'm looking at that, now I'm trying to get to the world map before you start talking.
Right.
So
that's a really good. That's a good question. So if you look at the continent of Mir section, so the book starts with Zog, and then you go to Norvold briefly, and then you go to Mir. It's one of the big sections, and on the continent of Mir, if you look at the map, the Mir map, it's the northwest area basically. So you'll see Port Talvin will be one of the bigger towns there, and Grim Hollow. So between Port Talvin and Grim Hollow is a village called Gorn, Gorn.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah. So in the PDF version, which has extra villages, it has 50 pages of extra information about villages, and that larger printed version will be available later on. In the PDF version, you can read the details about Gorn, and that village is where it started. So all that I had in the beginning was that village was under siege by a clan of orcs, and the party ran into somebody fighting the orcs outside of the village, and they had to try to get away and then get back in the village, basically to get behind the walls. They're on the wrong side of where they needed to be. And then the story around there started to connect. So that northwestern area, Grim Hollow, Port Talvin, and then the forest just south of it, the Wildwood. So they traveled through there, and then it was time to give them a really big city because they were starting to go up in levels.
Right.
So I made Wild, which is also another. So Mir actually has only city states. There's no kingdoms on that continent. So it started with that area from Wild to Gorn and Port Talvin, that sort of section, and we stayed there for maybe a year or two. Maybe at least a year. We were just in that area. So with my groups I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 5 groups now that have played in Mir over the last 8 years. We've only adventured in part of the Mir continent, a tiny section of Zog, and a little part of Nairn, and there's 3 continents they've never been to, any of the groups. So it tells you how big of a play, a sandbox, how big of an area you have to play in, right?
Well, that is information you can't get, I guess, anywhere other than the person who created it and wrote it. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, getting that little bit of lore of how the whole thing started. Well, okay, one more time. Tell us about the Kickstarter, when it begins, when it ends, and then what we should expect.
Sure. So the Fall of Rivenhelm is going to launch on December 7th. That's Thursday, November 7th. And it goes about just over 3 weeks till December 2nd. And that's the Fall of Rivenhelm. It's an adventure. There's a PDF version, there's a softcover version, there's a hardcover boost you can get as an add-on, because there were a few people that wanted a hardcover last time. There's options to get our monster books, and there's options to get the World of Mir campaign book. And we'll do a bunch of different giveaways and different talks on our different social media. We have a Discord page now where we give tons of details and people can ask direct questions. Yeah, and we've also decided in the future we're going to have more free content, and that'll be coming on our Facebook page. So we'll have free content from Mir as well. Yeah, the Kickstarter, as I said, it's about just over 3 weeks, and you'll learn a bit more about the details of the adventure on the page there, and then the social media will talk more about some other aspects. Like there's a very strange combinations of monsters. It actually starts on the river that goes from Rogan's Gate to Rivenhelm. So you actually begin on the river. So there's waterborne adventures. There's obviously city adventures, but it's a city that has a lot of obstacles in it because of what just happened. You can't just walk down the streets. It's a more challenging environment than that.
Awesome. Well, I am looking forward to that. It's always great to see the new content that you are putting out for your fans of the World of Mir and all of the monsters. So looking forward to this for sure. Andrew, it's always great to have you in the dungeon. We will talk to you probably sometime after this all comes out. So we will see you then.
Thanks, Tom.